Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Saka here with a brand new series in Kerbal Space Program, and this is a family-friendly tutorial/walkthrough series meant for the players who have never played Kerbal Space Program or have had a difficult time and don't understand it in order to enjoy it. So this will be just sort of a walkthrough of some basic things and elevating up to landing on foreign bodies such as the moon and Minmus, which is Kerbin's second moon. So let's go ahead and get started. We will play in Sandbox for now, giving us access to all the parts, and we don't have to worry about science or money. We can just have fun. And that's what Kerbal Space Program is all about, is having fun. So let's start a brand new game, and we are going to make this a sandbox. I'm just going to call this the tutorial series, and you can click on the flag and pick any one of these flags available. Also, I have added my own flag. There is a folder that you can navigate to and upload a certain folder, but that's the United Federation of Planets. And we'll leave the difficulty on normal because normal isn't too bad if you just follow along. And we click start. The first thing that we are going to see when the game loads up is the Kerbal Space Center. Now this is Gene Kerman telling you how to move the camera with the right click. Just a click and drag is all you need. You can use the mouse wheel forward and backwards to zoom into your Space Center, and of course left click selects the options. Now what is the Space Center? What is it made of? The most important thing for us is the launch pad. If you click the left mouse button on the launch pad, you will see a whole list of pre-made rockets that the people at Kerbal Space Program wanted to put in. Things like this space shuttle sort of copy, little guys like that, a small orbiter, you know, just things to play around with. But for now, we're going to close that. This is our tracking station. When we give a left click on the tracking station, we see the planet. Gene Kerman pops up to say, hey, this is how you interact with the map. And once again, right click and drag, and we can move around the planet of Kerbin. And this is where we are, a very Earth-like planet, but actually 1/10 of the size of our actual Earth. Now, if you want to know where we launch from, it's this Africa-looking continent. And if we use the mouse wheel to zoom in, you will see this little plot of land that is lighter green than everywhere else. That is where the Kerbal Space Center is located. Conversely, if we were to mouse wheel back, we can see the orbits of the neighboring bodies of the Kerbin local system. We have the moon, which if we left click on that, we can focus on it and zoom in and take a look at all of those craters that the moon is covered with. Once again, we will zoom out and look at this little guy over here called Minmus. We'll give that a left click and we will zoom in, and we will see this turquoise green, smaller moon, much smaller. The gravity here is much lower, which makes this an easier target to land on. Also, you notice these flat areas with not a whole lot of shading or bumps. These are ideal landing spots for us. There's also some on the back side of the planet which we can't see because we're being blocked by the sun. But this is a place that we can look to land in the future, which is excellent for us. Also, if we keep zooming out and zooming out and zooming out, we see these question marks in an update, the NASA update. These asteroids have been added to fly around Kerbin, so we can capture them and put them in our orbit and have basically a third moon if you so choose. These are not destructive asteroids. Even if they hit Kerbin, they're not going to do any damage. But we keep zooming out and we see Eve, Moho, Duna, Drez, Jewel, and out here on the outskirts is Elu. So these are our target destinations, and these aren't just one planet. If you click on Jewel and zoom in, you can see this very Jupiter-like planet, a green gas giant with all of its own moons. So every one of these is a place that we can possibly go if we can build the correct ship. So let's just exit out of the tracking facility, and that is our local solar system. This is our research and development, and in this stage, Sandbox, it is closed, but once you unlock science, you unlock parts, but Sandbox, we own everything, so we don't even need the research and development center. The astronaut complex is where we can hire Kerbals to fly, and you can see their ratings here. For example, old Herfin Kerman is a pretty stupid guy, but moderately courageous. Maella Kerman is not stupid at all and very courageous. I think she will be good for us so we can enlist. Now you notice when we added Maella and we see Jebediah, Bill, Bob, and Valentina, they are wearing a different spacesuit. These are the 4 elite Kerbals that Kerbal Space Program is known for having. Even in career mode, even if there's an option to check, but these guys will respawn, and girls. Valentina will respawn if they crash. These other astronauts, however, will not. Leaving the facility, we also see mission control, which is closed. In a career mode, this will give us tasks, contracts to fulfill, putting a satellite in orbit or setting a speed record, that sort of thing, to give us cash. Over here, we see the space plane hangar and the runway. So think of the space plane hangar and the vehicle assembly building sort of as cousins. This one builds craft that launches this way. This one builds craft that launches that way, which, you know, if you are a fan of rockets, you will build in the vehicle assembly building. If you are a fan of planes or single stage to orbit planes that can take off, get into orbit, and return on the runway, the space plane hangar might be for you. But without further ado, let's get into the basic controls and basic building. So click on the vehicle assembly building and you will be taken inside. Now, this is Werner von Kerman, our lead scientist, telling us how to navigate in the vehicle assembly building. Right-clicking, once we actually have a part, we'll actually do something. The first step is to select a control point. We see some cockpits, and we see these guidance units and this Probodobodine Stay Putnik. So you can tell pretty much right away, are they automated or are they piloted? So that's the first choice you have to make. Am I going to send a Kerbal into space, or am I going to send a robot into space? And with the new 1.2 edition, you need satellites to talk to these guys. So that's very important to remember, that as these go further into space, you need satellites to relay the information to control them. So it's safer to pick a cockpit that can be controlled by a Kerbal at all times. Now the right click will rotate around the part. The mouse wheel will pan up and down. If you click and hold the mouse wheel and drag, you can zoom in. Also, your arrow keys can tilt and pan as well as, no, not WASD. So your arrow keys on your keyboard can pan and tilt. The next step is to assign crew. Now this is a single pod, a single capsule, only one can fit inside, so why not Jebediah? Click on the build. So what is the next step? What do we need to get this thing up in the air? If we were to click launch right now, it would just sit on the launch pad with Jebediah inside and nothing would happen. Well, first we need fuel. So we can click on the fuel tanks and we have a very long list of tanks to choose from. And if you right click on any one of these, it tells you what kind of fuel is inside and how much. Now, the two basic things that you need to operate a rocket engine is right here in these fuel tanks. You see liquid fuel and oxidizer. They work side by side and are burned equally to produce rocket fuel. Jet fuel, however, is just one of these guys, just liquid fuel. This liquid fuel will not ignite a rocket engine, so you must pick something, if you want a rocket, that has both liquid fuel and oxidizer inside. I'm going to pick a very small tank that is the FLT100 fuel tank, a left click there, and just drag it to where those balls line up and they snap and it turns green. When a part is green, you can left click and now that has become part of your ship. The next thing we need is an engine. So we have a long list, well, a moderate list of all the engines here. Let's do this one, the LV909 Terrier liquid engine. And once again, that is going to snap into place. And essentially, we now have a rocket. One problem we might have, though, is landing. What happens if this runs out of fuel and we are up in the air? Well, we're going to fall like a ton of bricks. So the next thing we need in the utility bar is the Mark 16 parachute, which is designed to fit right on this capsule. Now, this is very basic, but it brings up a problem. If you notice down here, this is your staging menu. This is what happens when you press the space bar. If I were to press space bar on the launch pad at this time, both the engine would ignite and the parachute would open, which is not conducive for us going up. We want this parachute to happen after we launch the engine. In order to do that, we just click the plus symbol, and we can click and drag these parts. We can either drag the engine down, or if it was backwards, we could drag, say, the parachute down and launch that first, which wouldn't make sense, but that would work. So staging works from bottom to the top. You want this one to fire first and this one to fire next. So of course we will switch these around. So now what is going to happen when we press the space bar the first time? It will light this engine and we can use it. The second time we hit space bar, it will open the parachute, which is what we want. So this is a very basic spacecraft, but enough to get the controls and everything set up. So just click launch, and this will take us to the launch pad. Now, luckily for us, Kerbal Space Program has 2 save states at all times with a rocket such as this. If you hit escape, you can revert flight to 2 points, either to launch, which will take you back here, or to the vehicle assembly building. So if something goes wrong with this craft and we realize we need to change it and rebuild it, we can do it there. So this menu here is a little overwhelming, but we can break it down into its parts. This is the mission elapsed time, the MET, and this tells us in Kerbal time how many years, days, hours, minutes, and seconds we have been flying. And I put flying in quotes. This mission has been going on for 29 seconds. The arrows up top that you saw here is our time acceleration mode. Now, there is only certain times which time acceleration is allowed, and we will get to that a little bit later, but for now, make sure that is on the first arrow. We want ×1 time. This box is new to Kerbal Space Program 1.2. This is our signal strength, how our capsule communicates with our tracking station. Now, this is a fully upgraded tracking station. It has very good signal reception, so we don't have to worry about that. But in career mode, when these are very small, we do have to worry about our signal strength. And this means we have a direct connection to the Space Center here. Our next tab is sort of our flight computer, if you will, with our altitude. Notice how we're sitting on the ground, but we are 74 meters up. That is above sea level. Now, on Kerbal, the sea is right out there. You can see that thin blue line. That is at 0 meters, but we are 74 meters on top. So one thing to remember while we're landing is to keep in mind that this doesn't have to be 0 for us to hit the ground. This is our atmospheric pressure. So the lighter blue means we are in the thickest atmosphere down here at the bottom, and atmosphere forces air down onto your craft as you go up. It's aerodynamics. But as we increase our altitude, the pressure will go down until finally we hit 70,000 meters and we are in a vacuum, and outside forces are no longer pushing down on the spacecraft. This is your vertical speed indicator. If it is up, it means we are climbing. If it is below 0, it means we are falling. These are our toggle lights, and you can see the light turn on inside the capsule. That is a toggle. This is our landing gear. So if we were to put landing gear on this thing, we would click that button to drop the legs. And this is our brakes. So if we had wheels, if we were making a plane, we could hold that and hit the brakes. Now over here, there are 3 different buttons you can hit. This is your contracts menu, which is not available here in Sandbox. The next, if you click that, that will stage open. It tells us how much fuel in the liquid fuel and oxidizer that we have. Monopropellant is for our RCS engines, which we do not have on this craft. And the electric charge is how much battery life we have inside our capsule. So we can no longer turn this craft once the battery charge runs out. So this is where extra batteries and solar panels come into play. Down here in the bottom right, we see our Kerbal Jebediah. We can hit view to see things from his point of view, and we can right click once and pan the mouse around to see what things are like in this capsule, and there's our monopropellant over there. But if we want to get back, we can press the C key. C key toggles between internal and external camera. If we EVA, that means extravehicular activity, which he will climb out onto the ladder. Now don't move him, don't use your arrow key or your WASD to move him, because if he falls off, he cannot climb back on at this point without a ladder, so just hit B to board. This is our nav ball with cardinal directions. So north is pointing to our bottom, which is kind of odd. You would think north would be up here. It's very important to remember that when you fly this thing, to look at your nav ball, not the spacecraft. Now when we launch, we want to go to our right, to the 90 degrees, and I'll explain why that is in a moment. If we hit R, that turns on RCS. If we had RCS engines, we could use them, but we don't, so hit R again to toggle that off. The next button we will leave on, however, and that is the T key, and that is stability assist. Now, because Jebediah is a pilot and a very good one, we have access to all of these pre-designated autopilot points, but we want stability assist in the upper left to be checked green. This dial over here is where your throttle lever is. Right now we are at 50% throttle. If we hold the left control key, we go down to 0. If we hold the left shift key, we slowly increase it up to 100%. If we want to go to 0 throttle, no matter where we are, we hit the X key and it drops it to 0. If we want to go full power, no matter where we are, we hit the Z key. So the lower left of your keyboard is where you're going to be controlling your throttle. For now, let's just use the control and make it 50% or so. So using your control and your shift, you can get that about right in there. This is your G-force meter. This is sitting at 1G, meaning the planet is pulling down on us at 1 times gravity. As it goes up, you can experience high Gs. Now, the Kerbals have a very high tolerance. They won't pass out. They won't G-lock. So you don't have to worry about that. But the stresses on your craft, however, may be different. Over here, you see your staging, and you can modify your staging on the fly. You don't have to go back to the vehicle assembly building to do that, but it will not save. Down here, we have our staging mode, which shows the rocket. And we have the map, which is also the M key. So just like the tracking station, we can see where our craft is, right where I said, and you can use this down arrow, just clicking that, to bring up your nav ball. M takes you back to the craft. This means we are on the first stage, and these are our attitude sort of inputs. So if you press S, that is pitching down. If you press W, that's pitching forward. Now it is aircraft control, so W will point us down to the north, S will pull us up to the 180. If we press the D key, you'll see the yaw, that will pull us over to the 90. If we press A, it will pull us to the 270. And then Q and E are actually rotation, and you can sort of see the craft rotating a bit. That's also using up electric charge, so we don't want to do that too often. So how do we launch? Well, there is 2 ways we can do that. We can either right-click on a part and activate the engine, or we can just hit spacebar. Let's just right-click on a part to get that off. So, when you are ready, get a throttle where you would like it, and press spacebar. The rocket is going to go up, and then you're going to use the D key to sort of point it in this general area. So let's go, spacebar. Now, this isn't enough thrust to get us off the ground. The engine is running. We are burning fuel, so you need to use your shift key to increase the throttle. Now this shows us that we don't have enough thrust to weight to get us off the ground, and this is a problem. Because we cannot change this on the pad, we can escape, revert the flight, revert to the vehicle assembly building, and say, well, that didn't go well. We need a more powerful engine. Now, because we need a more powerful engine, we need a bigger fuel tank. To remove a part, you just click it, and then click in this gray area. You'll hear the trash can sound. Let's get rid of this fuel tank in the exact same way. Go back to the fuel tanks, and let's get this boy. And now, let's get another engine. How about the Reliant engine? Now we will click, nope, let's fix our staging. Always check your staging before you leave. Plus symbol, make sure the engine fires, then the parachute. And now we will launch again. Our new spacecraft will load up and we'll be ready to go. So I'll mouse wheel in, it is sitting on the pad. Let's go full throttle this time and press spacebar. Now we can sort of let the rocket do the work, just minor taps. This is D, this is D. This is our, let me pause it here. This is our vector. This circle with the yellow bars means that the rocket is going that way. If we were to turn, we would be burning against its momentum. So as of right now, the rocket is moving in this direction and our thrust is right below it. We are pushing that vector forward. So our rocket should be fairly stable. But if we were to sway too far off of this vector marker, the rocket may flip out. Think about this as a tunnel that we are cutting through aerodynamically. We are punching a hole in this point in the nav ball, and as long as we keep forcing through that hole, we'll keep making forward progress. Now what I'm going to do after I press escape is I'm going to use the control key to slow down. Because we're starting to get aerodynamic effects, you can sort of see this sonic boom effect going. We are pushing faster against the thicker air, and we're actually losing speed. So we are still gaining surface speed, that's fine, and we're only running at 1/4 throttle. We don't need a whole lot to do this. Now we are exiting the soupy part, but we're also losing our vector. Our vector is dropping down the horizon. We don't want that. So let's pick up our speed. And now we are gaining speed, but the rocket's starting to slip. If the rocket starts to tilt, slow down a bit and use your WAS and D to point this V right into the center of your thrust vector. We're still going up, but we're getting a lot of heating, so we can actually slow down. That's fine. Oh, I forgot stability assist. So if you hit T, Jebediah will do his best to keep this spaceship pointed right there. Now our fuel is about to burn out, which is what I planned on. So let's just get everything we can out of this. Shift it up, burn out the fuel, the engine will burn out, just like that. And now we are at the mercy of momentum. We have no fuel to slow down or speed up in any way. Now if we hit the M key, we can see what we did. This arc here is our projected path. Because we have a good tracking station, it says, hey, you're going to fly up here. This is as high as you're going to go, your apoapsis, and you are going to come back down into the atmosphere over here. Now you notice the planet is turning. So while it may look like we're going to land in this little bay, we're probably going to land like right over here because the planet will turn under us as we go. New to Kerbal 1.2, we see this green line. This means our communications straight to the Kerbal Space Center. But it doesn't do us any good anyway because we can't change anything. Let's M key again, and we are above 70,000 meters, which we get the nice music. It means we are in a vacuum, which means now we can EVA with Jebediah, and he'll hold on to the ladder, and we have no qualms about falling off. There is no air that's going to push us off of this ladder because we're in space. Now, if you are so bold to try a spacewalk, which for a beginner this may be very intimidating, but if you want to give it a try, we can. I'm going to board and make sure that this rocket isn't moving. Just like that. Once the rocket is settled, EVA, And now your WASD will move him up, down, left, and right. But one thing to remember is once he leaves this ladder, he is going to need some thrust to help him along, which is the R key. So I'm going to go down. He's going to let go, and you will see his animation when he lets go. I can't control him right now. What I have to do is I have to press the R key, and he rights himself. WASD will move him, but we're in space, so keep your adjustments very small. So this is D, move him to the right. A moves him to the left. S moves him back. W moves him forward. To climb, that is your shift key. So just like increasing thrust on your rocket. To go down, that is your control key, just like the thrusts on your rocket. So you can play around a bit, move him around. You can hit the L key to turn on your headlamps. You can rotate him with a right click of your mouse. But let's get him aboard. So we're going to move forward with the W, and we're going to get a dialog box that pops up that says F to grab. He'll automatically grab. Now you want to move him down over the hatch so you get the B to board icon. It's very important to remember never to EVA when you are in the atmosphere, when you are below 70, because he will get blown off and bad times will be had. Now is a good time to talk about time acceleration. So if we were to hit M and we hover over the apoapsis, we had enough momentum to carry us all the way out here before our speed drops low enough and Kerbin's gravity pulls us back down that we got up to 224,611 meters, and we are going to get there in 2 minutes and 27 seconds. Now, certainly, you can wait, but you don't have to. Using the caret keys down there by your question mark, caret to the right increases up to 5, up to 10, up to 50, and now we're really moving. The left caret key will slow it back down. Now the game will automatically slow you back to 1x time acceleration when you hit 70,000 meters, which I will demonstrate here. We're at 200,000. I'm going to caret up to 50% time. We're watching our altitude drop, and when we hit 70 right there, we are now under physics time acceleration. So we can go up 4 steps, but what that is doing is it's simulating the physics that's being affected on this rocket 4 times, which is very dangerous for big ones. But for a small one like this, I think we can manage. So let's time accelerate. Now we're starting to burn up in the atmosphere, and we're going to start seeing heat effects. Now, we can try to hit the T for stability and point him retrograde, meaning this is exactly backwards. We are punching a hole in the air backwards about right here. Now, because the rocket is not perfectly weighted, it's sort of hanging off to the side just a little bit. But that's fine. Hopefully we can survive a re-entry. We're shaken up pretty bad, but we're slowing down. The heat effects are going to go down, and you will see that this parachute is red. Do not hit the space bar and pop your parachute until this turns back to gray if you can help it. So we're going to slow down. Hopefully it's not damaged. I think it's actually damaged. Yeah. So our parachute was damaged in re-entry, which doesn't bode well for poor Jebediah. But no worries, at any time when you blow up, you can give it another shot. So Kerbal Space Program should pop up with the flight results, and you can revert to launch and try it again. Or if you want to revert to the vehicle assembly building to change something up, you can do that. Or if you want to accept Jebediah's fate, you can go back to the Space Center from here. So that is essentially basic controls 101 to get you launching a rocket and get you playing around and getting you familiar with the controls. Your homework for next time is to fly around, see if you can launch a rocket and land it successfully. Next episode, we will work on orbits. We will try to get Jebediah and his spacecraft in a very stable orbit around the planet that we can use to plot our next course. But that is going to do it for me in this first episode of Kerbal Space Program for complete beginners. Like, share, and subscribe if you are so bold. And for poor Smash Jebediah, he will see you in the next episode. Take care.